Hello and welcome back to Empowering Leaders. I'm your host and go-to executive coach, Phyllis Reagan. And today we're diving deep into a topic that's all too familiar for many of us, and that's self-doubt. It's important that we address self-doubt because self-doubt is what leads to lower confidence. It can lead to imposter syndrome. So today we're going to talk about what is self-doubt. How does it show up in your life? How does it show up in your leadership? And certainly, how does it manifest itself? And what do you do with it to manage it? So for a lot of my clients that I coach, they come to me with certain leadership areas that they want to strengthen, but they also come with something that seems to be a problem that they've had, maybe recent, or they've experienced it throughout their career. They've noticed that they have self-doubt. Sometimes it shows up in just that moment, or sometimes it's this lingering feeling that they have about themselves, about their career, about their leadership. And so it's important for us to spend time looking at what is self-doubt? How do you get a hold of yourself during self-doubt so you can manage it when it's happening, and then you can work on strategies so it doesn't show up the way that it has been in the past. So how does self-doubt show up for most people? Usually you'll notice you have self-doubt because you can't find your voice. And that can be literal. Like you sound meek, you don't project authority. You might be in meetings where you notice your voice is a little bit softer, or the tone is not as strong, or the word choices don't really express leadership. So that's often tied to self-doubt. You may not be speaking up for what matters to you, that's around you, maybe advocating for your work, your team's work, your ideas, your own career might be where you find that you have self-doubt. So this is what we're going to address today as well. Another thing that happens when you're experiencing self-doubt is you lose conviction. So I had this recently with one of my clients. She is really an expert in her field, had a storied career. She's at a high level now in her leadership, and she just received feedback from her own leader who said that he was questioning her in that role because she really didn't speak with conviction. And that was a strange thing for her to hear because she knew she believed in her ideas. She knew she believed that she was the expert. She certainly believed in the work that her team was doing, but it wasn't coming across that way. And as we dug deeper into it, she realized she did have self-doubt. She did doubt her ability at this level of her leadership, and it was showing up with how she was projecting her conviction, or less projection of the conviction that others around him would expect from someone at her role. Another way that self-doubt can show up for you is that you no longer trust your decisions, or not in the same level that you used to. That could be you're not making decisions that you need to be, or that you're slow to make decisions. And that can erode people's trust in you as well as your own self-confidence, because they're going to wonder, why can't you make those decisions in this role? Or what is it about you that's really slow to make a decision? And they lose that confidence. How does self-doubt make you feel? So self-doubt usually makes you feel unsteady. You can feel anxious, frustrated. There's a real fear-based feelings that come with self-doubt. There's uneasiness that you experience. A lot of negative emotions, of course, are associated with self-doubt. So you want to notice, what emotions do I primarily feel when I'm experiencing self-doubt? And then, what thoughts are you having? So self-doubt usually drives up these kind of thoughts. The thoughts can be, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not something enough. So insert whatever it is for you in front of enough, and that's probably one of your primary thoughts. Another thought can be, they know more than me, or they're better than me. I had a client recently, they were going to be in a presentation with other peers, and that was one of the primary thoughts that was really driving their self-doubt. They kept thinking others knew more than them. And as we looked at that, of course, it was not true. She knew just as more, if not more, than others, but she wasn't connecting to that. So we had to work on what was allowing that thought to really be front and center for her. Another thought is, I've always been bad at this. I'm a bad speaker. I'm bad in senior leadership meetings. I'm bad at leading my teams in this moment. But there's something that you think you're bad at, and you don't believe that you're going to get better at it. And that's really the difference between having a limited mindset and a growth mindset. A limited mindset is going to look at, I'm bad at this and I can't get better, right? Whereas a growth mindset be, I'm not at my best at this moment, but I know that I can get better at this. Another thought that comes up for you, maybe when you're experiencing self-doubt, be is, I'm not ready. I'm not ready for this role or this responsibilities. I'm not ready to lead this team. I'm not ready to be on this panel. I'm not ready to write this book. And then with that follows, I'll be ready when. And the when is usually something that you keep moving back and back and back. I'll be ready when I do this. I'll be ready when I have this much experience. I'll be ready when they tell me I'm ready, but it's really locked into that. And there's a lot of powerlessness in that. And then actions or inactions happen with self-doubt. So it's usually the wrong actions. It's you maybe being too confident in one area and lower confident in another. So you drive your voice a certain way, you have a certain tone in certain settings, and in others you don't. Your actions might be that you make a decision not to speak at an event, or you decide not to lead a certain project. Inactions can be not speaking up in senior leader meetings. It might be saying no to certain stretch assignments or certain work. So that's what happens when self-doubt shows up. I have clients that typically have challenges with speaking up in front of senior leaders or peers. So when they're in those settings, they find that their tone's different, the speech pattern's different, the rhythm of their speech is different. Their thoughts don't come across well. Some begin to really stutter or not get to the fullness of their thought. And that just makes them so irritated with themselves, and they become frustrated. They know they're not projecting leadership in front of others. Sometimes they're not projecting leadership in front of their team, and their team starts to waver about how they feel about their leadership. Recently in the news, there was a leader that just stepped down, the senior leader at a news agency, and all the direct reports around her, that was the message that they had been giving her, was they didn't see her to be the leader that they wanted. She did not project that kind of confidence. So that can be driven by self-doubt. Something could be happening in your own mind that's making you come across that way. So others might have opinions that you're not have a strong conviction, as I said before, about your ideas and your thoughts. You might find you even allow others to speak for you. Have you ever been in that situation? Like you're letting a peer or even a direct report start saying something that you know should be coming from you as the leader, but that self-doubt creeps in and you allow them to do that. I have clients, they'd love to say, I am a collaborative leader. And that's wonderful, right? That is a strength of a leader, to be collaborative. But what you want to look at is, are you leaning on that because of self-doubt? If you're finding that you're highly collaborative and you're letting others speak for you, they have the ideas that they get all the accolades for, the attention for, and you're kind of behind your own team, you have to see if that's really serving you well. Because your team actually might want you to be out in front. And certainly your peers want to see you more out in front, and your own leaders want you to see out in front. So if self-doubt is making you lean heavily on, I'm a collaborative leader, you want to see where are the boundaries around that for you. What happens with self-doubt is this. Your confidence erodes, don't feel the same way about yourself, your leadership. You don't feel the same way about your ideas, your decision making, your problem solving. Your own professional trajectory for your career might slow down. And you might even notice you have less advocates or no longer have advocates for your career that you had before. So there might have been a time where everybody was advocating for you for promotions, for you to have certain career challenges and stretches, and for you to really have the career experiences that's going to help your career grow. And now you notice you have less of that around you. You want to make sure that it's not because people have lost confidence in you. And the reason why you want to tie it to that it's not being driven by how you perceive yourself. How you perceive yourself is how you're going to come across to others. So you want to look at, is your own boss starting to question you? Do your direct reports waver in their confidence? Do your peers not look to you to be, the expert that you are in your role? All of that will give you the data you need to know about how you're coming across and how others perceive you. So once you recognize, okay, these things are happening to me, now what? Here's where the real work begins. This is the hard work that you have to do. You have to know what the root cause is. So the root cause can be something that's happened in your earlier part of your life, your childhood, may have driven these messages to you. It could be as you were in college, maybe there were some areas of self-doubt and now they're rooted and cemented in how you think about yourself. It could be along your career, these thoughts have come to you, or sometimes it's just in the business, the organization that you're in now. It's the manager that you report to, it's the direct reports that you have, it's the challenges of your work, and now you have these thoughts, right? This inner critic that shows up telling you these things about yourself that are not true. So with my clients, we really begin to delve into what is your inner critic telling you? And most importantly, where did that inner critic come from? Whose voice is it? Sometimes you're going to find the inner critic is your voice. It came from something. We're going to talk about where it might have come from. Other times you might notice, when I listen to that voice, it's my mom's voice, it's my dad's voice, it's a teacher's voice, it's a friend's voice, it's a professor's voice, it's my first manager's voice. But you'll notice that your inner critic comes from someone or some situation. And in order for you to start to unravel its connection to your self-doubt, you have to understand that inner critic. So research shows that your inner critic shows up at the age of 7 or 8. And that's really has to do with brain development. That is when you, at that age, you start taking in external cues about who you are as a person in the world, what your value is, what your worth is. You start worrying about how others think about you, like your peers at school. So you want to know what was happening at 7 or 8 that might be connected to your self-doubt today. This is important work. So I did this for myself because my primary self-doubt phrases that I had for myself in my young adult was, I was not good enough. And it really was strange to me. It was like this juxtaposition of who I thought about myself, because I really was a confident younger person. I knew it wasn't coming from my parents because they're the ones that really drove up my confidence in myself, and they told me things that, I could do anything that I put my mind to, and all these things that were very affirming about who I was in the world. So where did it come from? When I did the hard work and I looked at something, I realized that when I was in 4th grade, so that's 8 years old, when I was in 4th grade, I had terrible asthma. Exercise-induced asthma. So I couldn't participate in all these different kind of activities that my classmates would do. And one of them was around track and field. So there was this event between the classrooms in 4th grade. Each 4th grade class was going to compete with another 4th grade class in track and field, and I could not participate. And I can't remember, but my class either got 1st or 2nd place, but we got this really shiny big trophy, and it was at the front of the class. And my teacher was telling everybody about how proud she was, what a great job they did. She asked each of the children to come up and hold the trophy and take a photo with the trophy, and then she said something else affirming to them. But before she did that, she said, everybody can come up except for Phyllis, because I couldn't participate because of my asthma. So that's when it began. I'm not good enough, right? So she actually took room in my head. And as I developed, she was my inner critic that kept telling me that in certain situations. So if I was inexperienced in an area, I forgot that it was just about being inexperienced and that all I had to do was get more experience, right? It just drove up that self-doubt of I'm not good enough. This is not for me. I won't be successful at this. And that was her voice. So you want to know, what is the story that you're telling yourself? Who's driving that message, so that you can disconnect from it? Because it may have been helpful to you in the past. It may have been protective for you. It may not have been true then, so it certainly isn't true now. But you want to look at it and think, okay, I am actually now talking to myself as if I'm 7 or 8 years old in a situation as a grown person now. It doesn't make sense to pay attention to my inner critic. And this is when you start to have less power given to the inner critic, and you give yourself back that power. So you're not going to listen to those beliefs and that story any longer. How do you do that? You can journal, you can meditate, or any other kind of mindfulness practice can help you begin to hear the inner critic and unravel from it. Mindfulness practices are any time where you're able to just observe your thoughts and let them go. You don't run after them, you don't chase them, you don't believe them. Probably 90% of the thoughts that you think are going to not be true anyway. So you don't want to follow them. And certain mindfulness practices can be when you're doing yoga, like I said before, meditating, or it could be you're on a treadmill, you're walking with your dog. But any time where you can just disconnect from your thoughts and observe them is considered a mindfulness practice. If you find that I get on my treadmill and I problem solve and I think of everything that went wrong with the day and what I did wrong, then certainly that's not a mindfulness practice. So you want to find something that's going to be helpful to you and that's going to drive that up for you. The last thing you want to do in this is, or not even the last, this is really the really important part of it, is to understand this lineage of what happens when you're experiencing self-doubt. So the first thing you do is you have a trigger, you have a thought, you have an emotion, and then you go to inaction or action. So everything I talked about now, there's a process to it. So your trigger could be when someone says something to you, the tone they say it to you, the responsibilities that you have, maybe it's a presentation you're giving, that's the trigger. Then you have a thought, and your thought could be, I'm not good at this, they don't think I'm good at this, I don't add value, I'm not the right person for this, I'm not the leader that they want. Those are the thoughts. And then you have an emotion, and your emotion can be, I'm afraid to do this, I am frustrated, I'm anxious. Those are the emotions. And then they drive inaction or action. I'm either going to do this, or I'm going to really turn away from it. I'm going to say no. I'm not going to speak up. I don't say things with conviction. That is the inaction that usually accompanies self-doubt. So what you want to notice is when we have a trigger, most of us pay attention to the emotion. Someone says something to us and we notice, that made me so afraid to say what I wanted to say. And then you don't say it. So you notice the trigger, you notice the emotion, you notice your inaction. What you did not pay attention to were your thoughts. So your thoughts are where you can really make the difference in that chain. So what you want to say for thoughts, what you want to pay attention with your thoughts is, are they true or not? We have what are called thinking traps. And thinking traps are also known as automatic negative thoughts. Some people phrase them as ants. But thinking traps are thoughts that sound real, but they're not true. They're not really based in reality. And you think about ants running around your brain, those are your thoughts that are probably getting away from you. So thinking traps are thoughts that sound true, but they're not true. And when you're thinking about how you experience self-doubt or lower confidence or imposter syndrome, it's usually thinking traps that you're responding to. So you want to know which thinking traps show up for me when I have self-doubt. Here are some primary thinking traps for you to consider. One is mind reading, and that's where you think you know what the other person's thinking about you or what their opinion is of what you're saying. It can be really take away a lot of your power and energy drain because you don't really know what they're thinking about you. So you're just spending a lot of time in a way that's just not valuable to you. Another thinking trap is blaming. For people who experience self-doubt, it's usually self-blaming, where you think it's your fault that something didn't happen or it transpired the way that it did. And another thinking trap is called shoulding, where you say to yourself, I should have known, I should have said that, I shouldn't have said that. So it's that shoulding. But you want to check that. So if you're having thinking traps where you are talking to perhaps your manager and you think you know what they're thinking, you're saying to yourself, she doesn't think I'm going to do a good job with this presentation, you want to check that thought for validity. If you're having a thought that's shoulding, you might be saying, I should have said that during the leadership meeting. That might be a thinking trap. So how do you know what to do when you finally identify, I am having thinking traps and I actually know which ones they are? You want to do what's called challenging your thoughts. So challenging your thoughts is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to take the thought and you're going to see whether or not it's true or not. How you do that, and with my clients, I really believe you got to check the data. So what is the data telling you? If you believe you're not good with presentations or you're going to bomb in this upcoming presentation, then you check the data. How did I do during the last 5 presentations? You might find that that thinking trap of thinking you're not going to do well or you should know better is not true because you actually have performed well during the previous presentations. So challenging those thoughts will let you know whether or not they're true. If you find that the thought is not true, then you want to replace it. You want to replace it with a more positive, helpful, and believable thought. Now the believable part is really important. So you take a thought and you're going to change it. So instead of saying, I'm not good at that, I never have been good at that, you could replace it by saying, I'm getting better at that with each time I do the presentation. Okay, that changes it. You want to make sure your brain believes what you're saying, because if you go all the way to the other side of the continuum and you say to yourself, I'm the best at it, I'm going to have a slam dunk, your brain actually will go into overdrive of telling you all the reasons that's not true. So you always want to make sure your thoughts that you're replacing with are believable. Once you start doing that, that's where your power is, because you're going to be able to notice, I have these kind of thoughts that get away from me, that lead me to these emotions that set this kind of action or inaction. I'm going to start with my thoughts, I'm going to check my thoughts, and if they are not true, I'm going to replace them. And here's the important part. Say those thoughts often to yourself. Because often with thinking traps, like with any negative thinking, you have a well-worn neural pathway. You've been saying it to yourself so long that it just happens automatically. That's why they call it automatic negative thinking. So instead, you're going to create a new neural pathway. And the only way for that to happen is if you take these new thoughts, you say them to yourself regularly. You don't want to wait until the trigger shows up or the stressor to try out these new thoughts. You want to have them practiced and easily accessible by your brain. So I have my clients post them places. They're on Post-it notes, they're on their mirrors in their bathroom, they might be around their computer. They see them and they're saying it to themselves regularly. And the last important strategy for you if you're trying to break away from self-doubt is to know your strengths. Because all you do during self-doubt is focus on your weaker areas. It's important for you to remember what you're strong at, what you're good at, where you optimize, right? Where it's really best for you to place your energy because you get good outcomes from it. A lot of my clients really don't know their strengths. So they might have like some inkling from performance reviews or how people give them feedback. But you want to know like really concretely, what are my top 5 or 10 strengths? You can take a strengths test like the Clifton Strengths to find out what those are. And then you want to spend time really, really understanding those strengths, how they show up for you, how you've worked with them before, when they've given you successes before. This is going to help you when you're in self-doubt and you're in that loop, that terrible loop of not believing in yourself and not thinking the best outcomes are going to happen. You pull out your strengths to really remind yourself, I am good at this. I have performed this way before. People have given me this feedback before. That will break you from self-doubt. So one way to do this is to create a journal, a success journal, where you write down all of your strengths, you write down all of your achievements, so when you are in self-doubt, you refer to it, and it's just a reminder to let your brain actually pull away from all that negative thinking. So thank you for joining me today. I believe there are these 3 strategies that we covered. One is knowing your inner critic. The second one is understanding your thinking and changing, replacing those thoughts. And the third one is knowing your strengths and taking them out to help you with self-doubt are all going to be strategies that help you unravel wherever you are with your self-doubt today. Well, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button and join my amazing leadership community. I look forward to giving you more information that's going to be helpful on your journey. Until next time.